7 minutes after 7 o'clock, and you know that's the song that we line up Senator John McCain with traditionally. So let's get him right on the phone. He probably has a pretty busy day after all that's happened around the country yesterday. Hi, Senator.
Hey, Jim. How are you?
All right, first, hey, I want to talk to you about the F-35, but let's get you a quick reaction to the races, the gubernatorial races around the country. It appears at least that two GOP seats have just been taken.
Well, the two governor races were dramatic turnarounds from 2008, particularly as far as the independent voters is concerned. In Virginia, it was expected, as you know, Jim, the polls leading up to the election showed a significant win for Bob McDonnell, by the way, who served quite a bit of time in the United States Army, and in the reserves. But anyway, I guess the real kind of shocker of the evening was the size of Corzine's defeat up there by Chris Christie in New Jersey, which, as you know, is a heavily Democratic state. Just a quick analysis. I think that it's a fact that Americans are very worried about this increasing government takeover of auto companies, of the debt and the deficit of a government that basically is turned very far to the left. And they kept their Democrat base, but the independent voters swung heavily to the Republicans. And both candidates ran a conservative principal state race, but sort of an outreach to Republican voters with emphasis on jobs and the economy rather than ideology. See what I mean?
Yeah, well, what I like to hear that you're saying is that this is not just the cyclical, the Dems are in, so they're going to lose a couple of seats reaction. You think this is more serious than that?
Oh, I think you and I have talked about this before. I do the town hall meetings in Arizona and around the country. There's an anger out there that is palpable. The jobs, the economy, the continued expenditure of running up debts and deficits of historic proportions. I think this healthcare quote reform bill that they're trying to run through should be called No Child Left with a Dime, because it's total generational theft.
Is it going to get voted on this year at all, Senator?
They're going to try to, because they know it's like a fish. The longer it sits out in the sun, the worse it smells. So they're going to try very hard, and they do have 60 votes in the Senate and a large number of votes in the House. But there's no doubt that they'll be reevaluating this morning. And finally, there was a House race up in New York. There's a traditional Republican district. And as you know, there was a very liberal Republican ran. She dropped out. But the guy that tried to run in her place was very, very far right Republican, or, quote, conservative. And he lost because I think that district was a more centrist district, and he didn't live in the district, and he didn't know a lot of the issues in the district, and we're going to talk about it in a minute. Politics is local. You better know the issues that affect your district if you're going to succeed.
Well, and as you know, Prop 200 really took a beating yesterday here, even though a lot of conservatives were in favor of it, but that's the climate, right? The economic climate. I mean, we go through this every once in a while. People just don't want to do anything that might raise taxes.
Yeah, they do not, and what this obscene profits on Wall Street has got people and me just so angry, and they're doing it with our money. They're getting free money, and then they're taking risks and making profits, and bonuses are being given out in hundreds of into billions of dollars. Meanwhile, Main Street, Arizona, we're hurting with 17% real unemployment. It's a terrible dichotomy, and one that needs to be addressed, and I think that's part of what happened yesterday.
Well, and I know you and I haven't had a long enough time to get into something this deep, but just to at least throw out there, a lot of folks think that the left is by design weakening the dollar and that sort of thing to be able to take control of more. I mean, I know you as a prominent senator can't come out and say things like that, but I mean, some of the moves that are made, Senator, it's frustrating to see, because we know they're intelligent enough not to do it. So I don't know why else we see some of these moves happen.
Look, I don't think they're intentionally debasing the dollar and the value of it, But when you run up massive deficits and the Chinese own trillions of our money, and you run into this kind of situation over this kind of monetary policy, of course you're going to have a weakening of the dollar, and eventually you may have a debasing of the currency, which leads to incredibly high inflation, which is the greatest enemy of middle-income America. So, look, I have never been more worried than in the time I've been honored to serve about the fiscal policy. I mean, look, they just city just declared bankruptcy, and you know that there was disappeared $2.35 billion of taxpayers' dollars that have been injected into that organization. I mean, that's crazy stuff. We've put something like $80 billion into General Motors and Chrysler. Does anybody believe that Chrysler is going to survive over time?
Well, and it seems like we do more and more of that. All right, let's talk about the F-35 for a second, because
sure.
A lot of folks are excited here. The first question is, do we actually lobby for it? I mean, do folks like you and citizens like us actually try to let people know we want the F-35, and should we?
Well, we want to let everybody know that we want the F-35. We think that Tucson and Phoenix are the best places for them to operate. The Goldwater Rangers are the finest training facilities in the world, and we are interested in national security, and we welcome and we appreciate and we love the men and women who are serving in the United States Air Force as well as the Army, Navy, and Marine Corps. And we're in an all-volunteer force, and that the men and women in the military love to live in Tucson, and they love to live up in Phoenix and down in Yuma, and that we welcome them. I'm sorry to say that isn't always the case in some parts of the country. So, yes, we want them there for a whole broad variety of reasons, including the economic impact. But I sell Tucson and Phoenix, Luke and Tucson International Airport on the basis of it's best for our military and it's best for our nation's security.
Well, not to mention if we don't get the newest ones, right, won't we eventually, the F-16s and all that will fade away, and then we'll lose ground here? If we don't get the F-35, yes. But I'm guardedly confident. The only thing that bothers me, and is a big issue out there, is the encroachment around both the airport and around Luke Air Force Base. We've got to make sure that the Air Force understands that there's not going to be lawsuits, that there's not going to be noise problems, there's not going to be encroachment into the operating areas. And I must say that Pima County and the city of Tucson have done a very, very good job. Well, I got to ask you one last thing. Now, we got through our city council election, even though we don't know who won yet in most cases here in Tucson. But the next concentration will be CD8 and then your race. So I got to throw the token illegal immigration line out there before you go, because when I look at a lot of these costs in town, now that I've been here 11 years, I see a lot of it is connected to that. I feel badly because they're great people. Everybody wants everything to work here, yet I've lived in states where they didn't have the burden of paying for all these folks in the emergency rooms and in the schools and that sort of thing. So how much is tied to that? And is the country ever going to do anything one way or another? I'd almost be able to take any decision on the border at this point. Well, I'm happy to tell you that illegal immigration has dropped off dramatically, but a lot of that has to do with the economic situation, and they're just not jobs for them. Second thing is that we have improved the border enforcement dramatically. We've got a long way to go. We still should have the Guard down there until we have sufficient number of Border Patrol and others down there. Third of all, there is a huge challenge to the entire situation posed by this problem with the drug cartels and the violence on the border. Thousands have been killed on the southern part of the border. It has spilled over into our state, and on the other side of the border, the drug cartels are, depending on who you talk to, $16 billion to $30 billion a year business. They also engage in human smuggling, and they are threatening the very existence of the Mexican government because of the incredible power that they wield thanks to the money that they make, and that money is made in the United States of America because that's the destination for all these drugs. So I really want to see us
work more closely together to crack down on these drug cartels, who, as I said, were also human smugglers, enforce the border, and see if we can't help the Mexican government from being literally corrupted to the highest levels by these drug cartels. See my point?
You know, hearing you describe it, it sounds so scary. I would think, why don't we have the military there for just a week or so, just to make sure they shut everything down?
We have had some of the military down on the border. We have worked closely with the Mexican government for a change over the last few years. We are helping them with technology. But I'm telling you, when a border guard on either side of the border can make $40,000 or $50,000 by turning his head, you have got a huge problem. You know, we just uncovered a tunnel. I think it was Nogales. I'm not sure. They spent $1 million on it. We discovered it. What's $1 million to these guys? Nothing.
Oh my goodness!
You know, I mean, this is so the illegal immigration is tied to this problem of the drug cartels on the border. And by the way, finally, Jim, I think you might agree with me. Maybe we ought to pay attention to the drug problem in the United States and try and help out so we could decrease this enormous demand for drugs that we're creating.
Maybe if we quit worrying about the taxes and the money and the deficit, we won't be looking for a drink at the end of the night. Senator, always a pleasure.
I am encouraged, back on the immigration thing, I am encouraged by Calderon, who is trying very hard to try to get these drug cartels. A lot of things we could go have a whole program for a long time, but one of them is we are sending Mexican drug cartels to American prisons, and they don't like that because they live very well in Mexican prisons. And that's just one example of some of the things that we are doing cooperatively with the Mexicans. But believe me, the corruption reaches to the highest level of government, and it's a huge threat to the Mexican government. But again, drug smugglers also smuggle humans, and therefore the illegal immigrant program feeds right into the problem.
I have to ask you if you support Sheriff Joe Arpaio.
Well, I don't know what you mean by support.
Well, in theory,
he's very popular. Obviously,
is he going over the line, or is he doing a letter of the law?
Yeah, I don't know. That's why John Kyle and I sent a letter to Napolitano trying to get an answer as to exactly what these latest actions are that are taken. One thing, I know you're not that familiar with it, but this fight that goes on between the sheriff and the county board of supervisors is something that, frankly, embarrasses all of us. That they divert their attention to this, and I'm not saying who's to blame, but shouldn't they work together?
You would think so, Senator. Hey, next time you're in Tucson, please come in studio.
I'll come in studio, Jim. We got a lot to talk about.
You got it. Senator John McCain, everybody.